pretty straightforward. Okay, I really should not have a second one, but I'm just gonna take a bite. Hey guys, it's Mandy from Lady and Pups again, and I'm with Food 52 today to bring you a recipe from my cookbook called The Art of Escapism Cooking. And it's called Mochi bread donut with salted honey and cardamom. Okay, it's kind of a mouthful, okay? So this is what it looks like. A lot of Asian breads, those squishy Asian breads that, you know, we Asians are obsessed with, it starts with a roux. Instead of using a flour roux, I'm going to use a sticky rice flour roux, which is going to give the bread a really nice soft chewiness, and at the same time it helps the bread retain its moisture, so it kind of kills two birds with one stone. I'm going to be pouring 235 grams of boiling water in this, and what that's gonna do is basically cook the sticky rice flour and create a roux. So we're gonna mix this on about medium speed, I'd say, about like a couple minutes, until the whole thing is very smooth and you know you don't see any lumps in the mixture. In fact, you can go faster, like medium-high speed. So now you can see that it's gonna become this like glop, this glossy goo kind of, and it's gonna look nothing like a typical wheat flour dough because it doesn't have gluten actually, okay? Even though sometimes it's called gluten rice flour. So now it's very important that you let this roux cool down completely. Here in Hong Kong, it's super hot. I just cover it and I stick it in the freezer. I leave the dough hook inside. And then I stick it in the freezer for like, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. Okay? It took about 15 minutes in the freezer for the mixture to relatively cool down. It's not super cold, but it'll be fine. So now I'm going to add all the dry ingredients, okay? So flour, yeast, sugar, and salt. And on top of that, I'm going to add the eggs. Hold on. And then I'm going to start on low. It's gonna take a few scraping for the whole thing to come together, but it will come together. Don't worry about it. Now we're basically gonna knead this until the entire dough is even and smooth before we add our butter. And that's gonna take typically about like 5 minutes or so, depending. Okay, so now it's really smooth. I mean, it's not smooth yet. When I say smooth, I meant like even. So you don't see like, ingredients that are, in bits and pieces. It's all in a homogeneous dough, so to speak. And then now I'm going to add my butter. Scrape. This is a very sticky dough because even though it's kind of a low hydration dough, but the sticky rice roux is going to make it really sticky. Now once you add the butter, knead this for about 7 to 8 minutes on like medium-high speed until it's really elastic and smooth. So the dough has done kneading and you can see that it's become quite shiny and smooth and very elastic. Okay, and it will stick to the sides and the bottom like this, but it shouldn't feel like, it should feel like a dough. It shouldn't feel like a batter, okay? So if your dough is overly wet, you can certainly add more flour. Let's talk about the first proofing, okay, which is really important. If your kitchen is really cold, and when I say cold, I meant I'm gonna talk in Celsius here, okay? So when I say cold, it's like, 18 Celsius, to like 20 Celsius or below, okay? If your kitchen's cold like that, you can certainly cover this and let it proof at room temperature for about like 2 hours until it doubles. Or you can stick it in the fridge and let it proof overnight as well. But my kitchen is super, super warm right now. I'm talking 28, 30 degrees Celsius here, okay? So I know that if I leave this dough in room temperature to proof, it's going to double in less than like 30 minutes, okay? And that's not enough time to develop the kind of flavor that I want. So, and I also know that if I just cover it and stick it in the fridge overnight, it's also going to overproof as well, in 18 to 24 hours, just because the dough started in a warm environment to begin with. So the temperature of the dough is warm to begin with as we speak right now. So what I'm gonna do is, if you are living in somewhere warm and your kitchen is warm, what I do is I cover this and I basically stick it in the freezer for like an hour to just basically like chill the out, and then I move it from the freezer to the fridge to finish proofing overnight. So meanwhile, we're going to prepare our salted honey. I'm gonna need 1/4 cup of honey. I like to measure honey on a scale because it's just too messy to do it by volume. So that's 85 grams. And I always say use a floral honey, and I feel like people who hasn't had a good honey doesn't really understand what floral honey means. If you have only had honey from those like bare bottles, I'm sorry to tell you, but those are syrups, okay? Like honey should taste like flower. It should smell like flower. It should have these like very floral notes that, you'll smell them before you taste it. I need 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. And that sounds like a lot, and for 1/4 cup of honey, but that is because I actually want this honey to taste salty, okay? Instead of just like a hint of salt, because that's what makes this recipe special, really. It's that salty and sweet element going on with the cardamom and cinnamon spices. And then I need 1 tablespoon of butter. I'm just gonna eyeball this. Okay. And then all I'm gonna do is bring this to a simmer and let it all mingle together. There. Okay? That's what you're looking for. Once it's like foamy and bubbly like this, turn off the heat and just let it cool down on the side. Great. Okay, the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna combine my ground cardamom with ground cinnamon. You'll need like 1 part ground cardamom and 1/2 part of ground cinnamon, okay? So I'm going to do 1 teaspoon ground cardamom and 1/2 teaspoon ground cinnamon. So here I have this mixed up. I'm just gonna leave it here, set it aside until I need them. And then once my donuts finish the second rise, we're gonna get ready to fry them. This is the next day. As you can see, the dough has more than doubled actually. I'd say it's about like 2.3 times bigger, but that's fine. That's still, within the acceptable range. But if your dough has tripled, then that means that your dough has overproofed, and you may need to, next time you may need to reduce the amount of yeast or shorten the amount of rising time. I'm gonna try to punch as much air bubble out of this out of this dough as possible before I roll it out, because we don't want we don't want any big air bubbles that's inside the dough that is going to over expand when these are frying, and then, you know, resulting in like donuts with like big warts basically. So what I usually do is I just give it a good pounding, and after I feel like it's pretty flattened out, then I roll it out. And I'm gonna roll it out into about like 1 centimeter thick. Sorry about my dog. So about like 3/8 of an inch. You don't really want a donut that is too thick to begin with, because it's going to be hard to cook it through the center if it's overly thick. And plus, besides, know that these are gonna go through the second proofing, and it's gonna double, and when you fry it, it's going to expand again, so you don't want it to be way too thick, okay? So what I do is I have these parchment papers that I cut in you know, rectangular square size, and then I don't have a donut cutter, but what I have is, you know, cookie cutter that is I'll have all the dimensions listed out in the recipe, but then, you know, basically a big cutter and a small cutter, and that's how I cut out the donuts. So pretty straightforward, right? You just cut out one big circle, and you take out the little circle, okay? So you have a donut shape. And then I just I put it on top of that parchment paper, and then I leave it on a sheet tray. And then I just continue doing this. And by the way, because we all know that donuts are not something that lasts well, you know, it's usually, once it's out of the fryer, I typically suggest, I advise people to eat it within a few hours, you know. So I don't like to make donuts, like, you know, a dozen donuts that's not gonna be finished. So usually what I do is when I make this dough, I'll make like maybe 6 donuts out of this dough, and the rest of the dough I'll bake it into like a dinner bun, like a dinner roll or something. Or what you can do is you can cut out these donuts, and then you can cover with plastic wrap, put it in the freezer, let it freeze, and then when you want to serve them or you want to fry them, all you do is you take them out of the freezer, let it thaw, and then finish the second proofing. Okay, so let them double before you fry them. I'm gonna cover this with plastic wrap and basically let them double in height. Okay, it's not gonna expand too much in width, but you know, once it's doubled in height, it's gonna feel really poofy and jiggly kind of. Okay, I have to come here. Okay, so the dough has been proofing for about like an hour or so, and it's now poofy and relatively doubled in size. I have my frying oil here, and I've preheated to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit and about 150 Celsius. You really cannot have the oil too hot, because you don't want the donut, the exterior of the donut, to cook way too fast before it could expand, and also before the interior could get cooked. Okay, so 300, I feel like 300 Fahrenheit, 150 Celsius is about the sweet spot here. And what you're gonna do is, because these are not gonna come out of the parchment paper really easily, so what I do is I just place the donuts with the parchment right in the oil, and I let that, you know, kind of fry a bit, and as it's frying, the parchment paper is kind of just gonna get naturally released from the donut like that. And then I toss the parchment, okay? And you can fry 2 at a time for this, you know, for a pot this size, but no more, okay? You don't want to cloud the pot too much. And I like to use a chopstick to flip the donuts. You see, so that's what happens when you have a air bubble that's large, that's bigger than all the other air bubbles, and it becomes, you know, kind of this wart on the donut, but that's fine. I mean, it's not gonna affect the taste or anything. In fact, I think it looks pretty cute, but you know, like if you want like a perfectly shaped donut, then you want to make sure that you eliminate these large air bubbles. So let these fry until like golden brown on both sides. And it should take about like 2 minutes. If your donuts are browning way too fast, then your oil is too hot, okay? And you need to turn down that heat. Otherwise, the center is not gonna be cooked through before exterior is brown. So when you're ready to serve, pretty straightforward. You drizzle that salted honey liberally over the donut as if you were glazing them, basically. And then you take that cardamom, cinnamon mixture, and then you just give it a tiny dusting. A little bit goes a long way, so just the dusting will do. It's not for you. Not for you. No, 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 no. The salted honey is almost as salty as it is sweet. If you are a big savory sweet kind of a person like I am, you will like this, you will love this. Because the saltiness offsets the sweetness and it makes you want to go back wanting more. And then the spices, it's just like in the background. Okay, I really should not have a second one, but I'm just gonna take a bite. Did you see how airy inside it is? I hope you like this recipe. I really enjoy it. And again, this is a recipe from my book, and it's a moderate dough. Like, you know, it's a dough that I applied it for like 3 different kinds of recipes in my book. Very versatile dough. If you like that squishy Asian chewy bread, you're gonna love this dough. And yeah, make it and tell me what you think. It's, you know, I hope you like it. That's it. Bye.